Welcome everybody, my name's Siobain Hann. I'm the very long title Commissioning Manager for Partnerships for Older People, Physical Disabilities, Carers and Health. And I work within Adult and Community Services. Predominantly my work does focus on the 18 and above age group. However, I have a specific lead for carers. So if you're a carer of a child or an adult, then that falls under me. Strategically, there's operational work obviously going on within children's services or adult services. And I've been asked to talk about the Care Act. It is quite a weighty document, so I've tried to just kind of give you an overview. I am around, I'll wait outside afterwards if people want to have a chat and want a bit more detail about it, but I just thought I'd give you an overview today. I hope I'm going to press the right button. Ha! Okay, I'm going to talk about the main key principles that come out of the Care Act. The first one is about prevention, about preventing people's care needs becoming more serious, from delaying those needs, or in fact maintaining somebody in independence out in the community rather than expecting them to go into high-cost services, residential care, which may not be appropriate or fulfilling for them. We've got to talk about information and advice, and also to talk about services that can be provided and how they should be provided to meet the requirements of the Care Act. Okay, prevention. So this is a bit of a change from how we've worked previously. Social care and health, etc. have always worked towards, those people that have got most complex needs, high needs, where they're going to need quite a lot of social care intervention. The change now is about stopping people from needing those high care services, those highest cost services. So it's about saying, what can we do to help somebody to remain independent in the community, to remain healthy and well for as long as possible? Or if they become unwell, how can we help them return home and build up that resilience again and remain independent in their community, rather than going into, say, residential services and potentially becoming less resilient and less unwell during that period. So that's really, really important. There's a real move away from just high-level need to much lower prevention, community-based services. The second area, which is incredibly important as well, we've always had a responsibility. If a carer wanted help, then we should be assessing them and helping them with that. However, it's now a legal responsibility for us to seek out and ensure carers are being looked after. They're an incredibly important part of our workforce. They're a free part of our workforce, which is always important, but we must make sure that we support them like we would do any other workforce, to keep them healthy and well and able to continue to care for the person they may love or somebody in their community they're supporting, the cared for person. And the last bit, traditionally we commission high-level services for quite complex needs. Now it's about getting out there, working with the community, saying, what is it that's out there that we can support? So we're not talking about necessarily your day centres, your residential services. What we're actually saying is there something out there that would actually help that person? So if they feel isolated, is there a local group that would fulfil an interest they have, whether it's going for walks or whether it's reading or whatever, that would actually get them out and keep them well because they won't become depressed? So it's about looking at all communities, what those local communities can do. Information and advice. Okay. We have some very specific responsibilities now, which are detailed there, which is we need to let you know about what support and care is available. We need to let you know how to access it. Independent financial advice and support in finding that. That's a key one. People find that the financial side is a minefield. We need to make sure that people get the right advice to access the right services, get the right money, and know how to manage that. And obviously, if you haven't listened to John's presentation beforehand, it might be worth sitting down and listening to him if that's something that's important to you, because he can talk through some of the options. And obviously the bottom one we quite often call safeguarding, but that's about how people can raise concerns about the safety and well-being of another person. So that's the information we have to provide. We have something that is across Dorset, Poole and Bournemouth called My Life, My Care, which is a web-based service. And in fact, if you just go into the room just across here, we actually have some representatives who can show you what My Life, My Care does. If you still have children, what we just talked about earlier, the local offer, that's exactly the same thing, but that's for the 18 and below. Now, theoretically, both of those should link. So the local offer, if you're starting to plan for your child, should start to give you information in an area called transitions. So it'll start to give you information about what's there. It should then link you to My Life, My Care, and that should enable you to see what sort of options are available for somebody who reaches 18 and is starting to look at adult services. That's what the front page looks like, and tells you all the different areas. What's quite good about My Life, My Care is as you go into it, it actually has a checklist, asks you questions. Do you need help at home? Are you lonely, etc., etc. And as you click on different things, it will actually then direct you to the information. So you don't have to keep Googling and keep searching around. It should send you where you need to go. we're still learning, we're still developing all the time, and the transitions for our kind of our 14, 15 upwards as we're going into adulthood, we're still trying to get those questions right. We want to work with young people and their parents to actually find out what are the right questions and how can we make sure that information is available to them. So that room there has both the local offer and My Life, My Care in terms of information and advice, and that's a web-based system. Got a human element. I can only talk for Dorset because I come from Dorset County Council, but I'm sure there's probably another team that's just known slightly differently in Poole and Bournemouth. But we have the adult access team, so you can phone them up at the County Council and they can give you information and advice. They can help you to arrange assessments, whether you're a carer or whether you've got somebody who needs assessment, who's being cared for. That comes directly off Dorset for you, that information, so if you need that, that's there. So that's some information and advice. Okay, providing services. As I said before, traditionally we've always provided the high-level, high-cost services because we've been funding services that are our statutory responsibility. Those statutory responsibilities have changed. So it's very important for us now to do something earlier. So we call it early help, but it's prevention in another word. And that's about looking at people early on, whether it's somebody who has a disability, whether it's acquired or they've had it all their life, whether perhaps they're becoming unwell as they become older, or they've acquired ill health through certain circumstances. We need to be working with those people, we need to be keeping them well, and that means we need to be looking much earlier and what we call commissioning or purchasing services at a much earlier stage. So we have more responsibility now to go out and look at our communities and say what can they provide for the people in their community. We have a responsibility within our social care teams to look at each individual and not automatically send them off to a day centre, but actually say, what is it you want? What are your aspirations? What do you want to do in life, and how can we help you do that? And what's out there that can help you do that? Then we have our traditional, which is working with our partners to identify care and support needs. Some of those might be quite low level, that fall below the criteria of what we call statutory responsibility, or they might be people with quite high level needs, and again, looking at what types of services they need. And the third one is traditionally more about people who've gone into hospital. So they've become unwell, they've had either an acquired injury, or perhaps they're getting older and they're becoming more frail. Rather than putting them straight into some sort of home or into a house, can we get them home? Can we provide them with the services they need? Can we adjust the house? And can we keep them in their community where they're going to stay healthy and happy because they have a community, their friends, their family around them, and it's going to enable them to live a much happier lifestyle. Okay, now the Care Act is actually separated into two phases. The first phase we were required to bring in by April 2015, and that's all that I've spoken about. So that's all about looking at the care needs, identifying people, identifying services, changing how we provide support. The second phase was to be brought in by April 2016, and that's much more about the financial aspects. So we've always had what we call a means test, so that's how much money you've got. If you hit a certain threshold, if you're below that threshold, then you get financial assistance from social care. If you're above that threshold, then you start having to provide contributions towards your care, obviously up to the far end of the spectrum where you're called what we call self-funders, so someone that's got enough money that can provide their own care. That was supposed to change, the threshold was supposed to go up. We also had a cap on social care costs, so rather than somebody having this never-ending view of how much money they were going to have to spend over years and they were going to end up spending all their money on care, a cap was to be put on there to say, you will spend up to this amount of money, and if your care needs go on, then actually we will have to help you be provided with that care. That's now been delayed until 2020. The government felt it was unsustainable financially in the current economic climate, because obviously there's a cost to that because we're taking on more responsibility. It's still there, we don't know what it's going to look like, but at the moment the message is that it won't happen until 2020. However, there is something called the Deferred Payment Agreement. Now, local authorities have always had the option to help people with their payments. So you've probably all heard in the news lots of talk about, well, I'm going to have to sell my home to pay for my care. There's always been an option for a local authority to pay out and then take that payment later. This has been reinforced in the Care Act, so to set up agreements with people to pay that money up front, and then when it's an appropriate time when that person chooses to sell their home, or unfortunately if they pass on, then obviously there's an option then to recoup that money. That has happened, that has come in, and that is an option for people. Transitions. Now this is quite an important bit. We have a number of acts. We have the Children and Families Act, we have the Special Educational Needs and Disability Reforms. They all go to the age of 18, and then you move into the Care Act, which takes responsibility for people over the 18 and over. So obviously, for our younger age group, children with special educational needs and disabilities, for the carers, the parent carers of those children, and also for young carers. We have a lot of young carers who are either caring for their parent or may even be helping to care for a sibling. So it's very important that we support them, we look after them, we keep them healthy, we make sure they're still able to access education, but if they have aspirations about what they want to do with their life, that's not held back by their position as a carer. And that all falls under the Children and Families Act. Now, if you're a parent and carer, under that Act, you should be able to get support. They should be assessing you as well as a child as part of that child's care and support needs, and they should be saying, how can we support you to support that child? And that's predominantly where people get support. But what's very important about the Care Act is you, as an adult carer, are entitled, if you're not getting support or you want to look at other areas of support, you can ask for an assessment under the Care Act separately if that's what you want to do. Hopefully you're getting it through Children and Families work, but it is there if you want it. And this is one of my last slides, but I thought it was very, very important for parents to understand. This is not just about, when you talk about transition, this is not just about children who are already receiving support. This is about looking at that child. Are there going to be significant benefits for them having support when they become an adult? Because things change for them when they become an adult. They become independent. They might want to move out of home. So it's very important that people recognise, even if you're not getting specific support, say from social care when they're under 18, actually you can still ask for an assessment to happen and for that child to be looked at in terms of when they're post 18 and when they may decide to go off to college or just want to move into a shared house or want to change their living and actually get the opportunity to access different services in adult. What's also important is we talk about that threshold of the age of 18, and that's when they move between services. But actually it's really, really important. There's lots of planning that goes on, so people aren't worrying about what's going to happen when that child turns 18. So there's actually no legal bracket for when you start that transition from child services to adult services. I mean, one of the questions you saw earlier was, when do you think it should happen? Should it happen before they're 14? Should it happen at 14? It really is dependent on the child and what services you want to get in. But you can ask for an assessment well before they're 18 and talk to your social worker or whoever and say, you know, when's an appropriate time to actually manage that. So that planning's in place and you haven't got that anxiety or that worry that services aren't going to be there. If they have an education, health and care plan, that stays in place until new plans are put in place. Even when they turn 18, that carries on until that new plan is in place. So there should never be a point where there's a big gap between services. That should be there. Okay. Everything I've talked about, I'm sorry you can't see that very well, very useful. If you go into the Department of Health, they have some really useful leaflets that break down every single area, whether it's talking about carers, whether it's talking about finances. We've got some really good information, so if you're interested in a particular area, go into the Department of Health. I have got some handouts actually which I've put out in case anybody wants them. Also, if you go on to Dorset for You, again they'll explain the Care Act in simple terms. They have simple leaflets, so you don't have to wade through weighty documents. They'll give you the key points. And obviously we've talked about My Life, My Care, which will give you information on the services. Is there any questions?